Today, we're digging into a structural shift that happens in our work lives, how the very tools that are designed to empower us can, over time, evolve into systems of control. It's a pretty common experience, right? A system that once felt liberating now just feels restrictive. And the reason for this isn't rooted in bad intentions. It's really about the pressures of scale. So to understand this transition, we first have to look at the initial promise that these systems make.
Every single productivity system is introduced with a clear, positive purpose. It's designed to solve problems, not to create them.
And that core promise is all about efficiency. These tools are meant to make work smoother by reducing friction, more consistent by standardizing how things get done, and of course, more effective by increasing output. And in the beginning, it really works. It feels liberating. Your personal autonomy seems to go up because you're getting more done with less of a hassle. Coordinating with other people gets easier, and your effort feels amplified, leveraged. But this feeling is actually masking a much deeper transition that's happening just underneath the surface. The whole game changes completely when an organization, or any system for that matter, starts to grow. The function of these productivity tools begins to fundamentally shift. And here it is, the crucial point. At scale, the very human qualities that create value, judgment, adaptation, making contextual decisions, they get reframed as systemic problems. Think about it. As a system scales, those one-off exceptions start to multiply. The web of dependencies just expands and expands, and the cost of a single error, it rises exponentially. So what was once totally manageable becomes a significant systemic risk. So to manage this new, fragile complexity, the system gets a new prime directive: predictability. It needs to reduce variance to make sure everything operates in a stable, efficient way. So where does all this unpredictable variance come from? Well, the primary source is human discretion, that capacity for contextual judgment, for adaptive behavior, and for local optimization. This here illustrates a fundamental change in perspective. You see, at a small scale, contextual judgment is an incredible asset. But from the system's point of view, at a large scale, that exact same judgment just becomes unpredictable noise. Adaptive behavior, which was once a strength, is now seen as a source of instability. Okay, so this need for predictability and for reducing all that variance, it triggers a crucial transformation. The entire purpose of the system itself begins to change. The system evolves along a pretty predictable path. It starts out by assisting workers. Then, as it scales, new problems pop up. To solve them, the system begins to constrain human discretion. And then finally, it becomes the governing structure that actually directs the work. Automation becomes the key mechanism for this new governing rule. Now, we often think of automation as a tool for doing work, but in this context, its main function becomes enforcing the rules, the priorities, and the acceptable outcomes that are defined by the system. And right here, the shift becomes permanent. Human decisions become software defaults. If you want to deviate, you need a justification. The guidelines are no longer suggestions, they're governance, and they are embedded right into the workflow's code. This really shows that transition point. Systems that once assisted workers now constrain them. The high autonomy you once had is replaced by a requirement for process compliance, and the focus shifts from the actual output to just following the process. So here's the crucial takeaway. When governance gets embedded into the system, power inevitably shifts. It has to go somewhere, right? Control is no longer held by the person who's actually doing the work at the point of execution. Instead, control and authority move upstream. They go to the people who design the systems, who define their constraints, and who set their objectives. This chart really visualizes the result. Authority gets concentrated upstream, which leaves workers to just execute within these predefined limits that are set by the system. The locus of control isn't with the individual anymore, it's with the system itself. Now, this profound shift in control, it often goes completely unnoticed. And why is that? Well, because the surface of the system is designed to feel empowering. The interfaces are super user-friendly. The dashboards are filled with metrics that suggest you're the one in charge. But underneath all of that, your choices have already been pre-filtered, and the paths you can take are already predefined. This is such a critical distinction.
Having visibility into your metrics on some dashboard is not the same thing as having control over the methods, the strategies, and the judgments that you can use to do your work.
And the major drawback here is that these control-driven systems become brittle. Sure, they perform great in stable conditions, but they tend to fail when they're faced with anything new. They are literally designed to suppress the adaptive human judgment that's required to navigate unexpected change.
So ultimately, the very nature of work itself is transformed. It becomes less about skillful execution and more about just complying with the system's process. Individual learning slows way down because there's just less room for experimentation. Responsibility gets all diffuse. Is it the worker's fault or the system's? And as a result, the overall resilience of the entire organization declines. This channel explains money, artificial intelligence, and decision-making as interconnected systems. No hype, no gurus, no personal branding. New videos weekly.